Cool. Well, thank you for getting on with me tonight.
Um,
On short notice too. That's nice.
well, I don't have any plans ever. Got a 6-month-old plus
Yep.
plus no life.
I got an almost 7-month-old. We're so how's
Yeah.
how's the little one doing?
Oh, she's great. Being the difference between boys and girls, man. I just love being the dad of a daughter and stuff. Like the boys, like you could just like karate chop or like whoosh them around or like make them drum on your belly with their hands. And my girl's just like, what? No, that's okay. You know, this is like really soft and gentle. And oh my god, I love it. My daughter, we love it. So different. Like we were just, and our second boy is like testosterone central.
Mhm.
So it's a nice change of pace. Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, we're kind of scared, like if we ever do have a boy, that we're going to be totally unprepared for it. And
My wife said that too, and I'm just like, she had 2 older sisters, so you know, and it's like, how can you be a girl and not know how to be a mom to a daughter? You know, I get it if you're more comfortable being a mom to sons, but whatever. I told her, I was like, no, you know how to have a relationship with your daughter. You watch Gilmore Girls. I mean, come on. So yeah, I'm sure you'll be fine. If it's a boy, you guys might be a little caught off guard when they start running into things all the time. But
yeah,
I'm sure you guys will be able to handle it.
we'll be all right.
I could see Heather. I could see Heather totally like being a mom to boys, just like oh, high energy. All right, I can match that. Just you know.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Cool. So are you sequestered at home like most people?
Yeah, Utah's. So it's funny. Utah's numbers are really bad. Like today was the record high for new cases. Yeah. 303. Like before they moved it to yellow, the highs was like high 100, low 200s, and then it just keeps getting higher. Yet they keep like putting the colors down, so they don't want to reverse course. But I don't know what they're gonna do. I just have a feeling summer and schools, I don't know, it's gonna be a crappy year, I think.
Yeah.
So I mean, and some of the restaurants I picked up takeout, and there are all these restaurants open that are like empty, like people aren't going. Like so you can go out in Utah, but
yeah,
I'm not seeing people really doing it. I mean, there's probably a few hot spots. I'm sure there's this bar that's super close to me that I can walk to like within 2 minutes, and they had people in there. So I'm mainly sequestered. Yeah, not going into work. There's no one. We see family a little bit more, but that's it. So,
yeah,
it's mostly the same.
All right, so let me pull up. You had a lot of interesting interests.
Pretty idiosyncratic, I guess.
That's good. That's exactly the type of thing that I like. So let's see. To give a little outline.
I think Jake, the only person who, other than us, who really had a request was Jack. So I don't know. We can start with that since he's the only one who cares. He actually made a request. You know.
That was the voluntary secular society, right?
Yes, voluntary secular society that's governed the way the LDS Church is the safest choice in the future. He says, I think a lot about this topic. Yeah. I think Jack has become, after learning more about him, I think in some ways, not in every way, because he's way more young and he's way more full of energy. But yeah, he seems to be in line with me the most on that kind of stuff. There's this one of the many ominous things Braden said. It was one of the few ones that I noticed before it went down, was when he said, I'm the least, you might remember this, he said, I consider myself the least intellectually curious of my friends. Do you remember him saying that?
Yes, I do remember him saying that, and I remember thinking that was unusual.
When I heard it, I was like, oh, I thought it was because he was discouraged because of his divorce, and he was just kind of exhausted. And I'm kind of like that too, only without the doom and gloom.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like I've aged a lot in 5 years. Like between the ages of 30 and 34, I was reading a crap load and
Mm-hmm.
really putting a lot of things together. But I think a lot of it might be the baby though. Once my kids stop exhausting me, maybe they'll have more energy. But I get on the forum and I feel self-conscious about how low quality of stuff there is. So I'm glad to be talking about this verbally because I'm the opposite of Paul the Apostle. I do much better talking
Mm-hmm.
than I do writing.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a couple good posts.
So you're like Moroni, right?
Yeah.
Did Moroni say he was?
Did Moroni say he was a good speaker?
I think he said he was a good speaker. I think he did, and he also said, Moroni was the one. He said he was a good speaker. The brother of Jared was an excellent writer, and Moroni referred to that. But he was self-conscious.
Yeah.
Moroni was self-conscious about his writing, and said, "Oh, if I could speak, that's where my strength is."
Yeah. Okay.
So you're Moroni.
I remember. Yeah, maybe. That's funny because I identify a lot with him and Mormon and Jacob more than I do Nephi. Well, I used to identify with Nephi, but I'm trying to move away from that. Anyway.
Oh, okay. Well, I'd love to come back to that. By the way, total tangent. Have you ever played Jackbox? It's like
I've heard about it. It's like a digital charades.
It's a lot of different things. It's an Xbox collection of games. So yeah, it's an Xbox thing, but I have it on my computer. But and then there's a game in it called Quiplash, where you basically answer questions and try to give the funniest answer that most people will vote for. Top quips. But anyway, so but one of the ways that we do it, so there's a family mode and then there's just normal mode, and my family's kind of like, when it's just my sister.
I remember you saying that. Yeah. Rated,
we do
rated
the non-family
PG
mode
versus rated. Yeah.
Right. But I recently tried doing this thing where I try to answer in the most total righteous way ever. So usually my name's Todd, but then I'll also I'll put in my screen name as Moroni or Captain Moroni or something.
Okay.
And then when I do that, I try to answer in the total most by the book righteous possible way ever. Yeah. And just overdo it,
Oh, that sounds funny.
I think one of the questions was something that something you could train your dog that would be really scary, and my answer was something like to disobey the prophet or something like that.
I thought you were gonna say that would be really impressive, and I was like, read the scriptures.
yeah. That would have been a good answer to you. So, so I take on the Moroni nickname sometimes too.
Sure.
Oh, but anyway, so back to secular.
Well, the Book of Mormon ties a lot into that though, because the Bible is here's some great things and here's what you need to do. I was talking with we were visiting someone in our previous ward, and this the wife says to me, we're all four in the room, she's like, well, she wanted some advice on a talk, and it was about, I can't remember exactly what question she asked me, but there's something about the Book of Mormon. She said, I just keep reading it, and it doesn't really help me with, depression or with feeling better, feeling happy. And I said, that's because the Book of Mormon is the worst standard book to do that. If you want to feel happy, then read the New Testament. And the Book of Mormon, and you don't have to feel bad about that, because the Book of Mormon says its job is to make you read the Bible. I think a lot of people take that for granted, and I'm sure you're one of the few people I think who understands that better than just about anyone, that it's not there to be its own thing. It's there to say, no, seriously, go read the Bible again.
Right.
But sorry, I got allergies. I would say, I think this has probably come up some more in the forum, but if we exist for eternity, not cyclically, which I don't think that's clear, whether how much there's how much rebirth type Buddhist type stuff there is in LDS theology, but
Mm-hmm.
most people, I think, take it as a standard Western thing. You're going to sit there forever with your peeled grapes and your wife and your kids, and that's it. And you don't inhabit a different body. You don't inhabit a different kind of existence. It's just kids, babies for forever.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's like, if you have a society like that, and there's if the chance is greater than zero, it doesn't matter how many zeros are after the decimal point, the civilization will collapse. Like eventually, it might take 3 trillion years or whatever, but if there is and that's how I read the endowment. Like, at the beginning, they're like, we're going to lay a trap for Satan because we already know this is coming, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you can take that as a literal event. There's literally this dude that's going to try to do something, or you can use it. You can approach it as a metaphor for your personal self. Eventually, you will want to go crazy and do whatever the eternity version of a school shooting is, or whatever, and you have to guard against that or something. And so, like, it's just assumed that, like, I feel like the Book of Mormon says eventually all societies are pretty much going to get destroyed.
Yeah.
And for them, it's like, well, we made mistakes, so our civilization fell, like Rome, you know. But I think they're also making an argument, like, eventually it's always gonna fall. It's just how long can you keep the plate spinning every time? I really have become convinced of that. Is there a system that could make it so that you're always safe, or you could reduce the risk a great deal? I'm sure there is, but as far as democracy, communism, and the stuff that we have on this planet, like, I don't take for granted that the Earth will exist another 50, 100, 1,000 years. I mean, it probably will, but all sorts of crap can happen. I remember.
Yeah. So you mean like people on the Earth, right?
Yeah, it's fascinating how people don't really have those Cold War worries anymore. There's still all the nukes, but no one worries about them being set off anymore. But they're still there.
They're still,
I guess maybe they're optimistic because they're like, well, people like Saddam Hussein and North Korea have had them and they never used them. So I guess people just kind of get in this complacency. But to me, it's like, I don't know. It's still technically a possibility. It's something to think about.
I think I read John Gray made a similar point. I think I mentioned in our conversation with Jared and Jack. He's kind of like this pessimistic guy, or that eventually, you know, things are there are things to be pessimistic about. Like, eventually, somebody's going to do something.
Someone will pull something off.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting, that perspective on the Book of Mormon. It reminds me of President Benson talking about how it's the record of a fallen people.
Yeah, it really is, and every time, all the four core writers, to me, it's like it's two sets. It's Nephi, and then Jacob has a small space, and then it's Mormon, and then Moroni has a small space. There's Enos and the little guys in between. I saw a funny tweet saying there's nothing more relatable than when in Book of All Night all the guys are like, I didn't do my journal.
Right. Yeah.
But those four guys, all four of them say that. They're like, you guys got to watch out. Like, so many bad things can happen. I'm just trying to help you. That's what all four of them are, guys who feel bad. They feel like they're failures. They probably are failures, because everyone is, and they're just trying to say, don't, you know. I think that's a huge part of the book. Yes.
Yeah,
that over and over and over again they say that. And my favorite verse is Mormon 9:31, where Moroni says, "Be grateful that you were not as we have been, but rather be grateful that you can learn from our mistakes." And so it's just like when you build. I feel like instead of constructing something new all the time, everyone's like, "Oh, let's start all over." It should be more like, here's a good analogy. In software, they say they don't rebuild stuff over and over again because that's so insanely ridiculous and nobody remembers how it began. Instead, what you do is you patch it over and over again. You just say, here's a new patch, and to the point that nobody remembers the beginning anymore. Which you might have heard that coming up as a problem with like air traffic control. Like, oh, there's this old that people use COBOL and no one knows how to program in that anymore. It's a 60-year-old computer language. I would imagine in eternity, there would be like assignments, and they'd say everyone would be like a guardian or caretaker of old languages and old skills in case certain bad things happen. And you can actually, the Book of Mormon has that a little bit too. They keep saying, we need to preserve the language. We need to preserve the language. And people think it's just so that you can read the scriptures, but I don't know if it's just about that. It could be other skills involved too. Where are we going with that?
Well, I have a question just that came up on the reign of the judges versus the reigns of the kings. So it seems like when they transitioned to a reign of the judges, things got pretty hectic pretty quickly.
Yes, you know why that is, right?
No, why is that? I mean, I have some thoughts, but
oh no, I've been talking way more than you. Let me go grab my. Hold on.
Okay. Got it.
Well, okay,
I mean, my thought was just that it's.
You go first.
Just that idea. It's not as good of a system. Maybe that you distribute the leadership so broadly that that people may not be able to handle that, and it's better to have one competent and righteous person.
It's the opposite of that, though.
Okay.
And I can prove it. Hold on. This is actually one of the few things I addressed in my book that I'm never going to finish because no one wants to read it. But what happens is the people have the old habits die hard. Mm-hmm. That applies to governments and organizations and businesses, right?
Yeah.
I think someone posted on the forum, what's that guy at Harvard, Christensen?
Clayton Christensen.
Yes. And he made the point that like the church is kind of like a business, and when President Hinckley said, "Bring what you have, we need fresh blood," he really meant it. That wasn't just him doing his PR shtick. Yeah. It was like if a business, because what happens in businesses is you keep hiring the people who are different, self-select themselves and go look for other jobs because they don't feel comfortable. Yeah. The struggle of any business and church is to make sure that you keep that variety there. And that's one reason the LDS Church, its organization is amazing. Like, I have a great story that illustrates this. My stepmother, we will get back to Alma. This is a great question.
No problem.
My stepmom, once the last place we lived, there was a steak center right across the street from us. And it wasn't even in our steak. And my stepmom's like, why? She's like, you can't go to that church? Like, no, we're supposed to go to this other one that we can't even walk to in hot or cold, super cold weather with little kids. And actually, no, there's literally no sidewalks. We were on a really busy road. Like, we literally have to drive to church, even though we're in Utah. And she was just so confused by that. And then she was kind of like upset that like we would be ordered to go to this specific church. And I later thought about it, and I said, if you can just go to whatever church you want, that's like when Jesus said, well, how impressive is it when you love your friends? That's not impressive. It's love your enemies is where the real work goes. And if you are assigned to a geographical area, you are guaranteed to go to church with someone who drives you insane.
Yeah.
It's every single ward, there's people who don't care for each other the most. They wouldn't be friends otherwise.
Yeah.
But so many of the greatest moments and your greatest development as a person comes from being forced to interact with those different people.
Yes.
And so it's like Trev says, it's like, oh, so like China, except voluntary. That's why the church that's why people in China love Utah. All the Chinese people in my work, they're like, oh, Utah's so different from the rest of the country. It's like because culturally it's the most similar in that way. It really is. It's the truth. Okay, back to Alma. So what happens is King Mosiah says it's not right that one person should have all the burden, right?
Yeah.
So they have elections, and who do they elect? Who's the guy that got elected to be the first chief judge?
Alma.
Yeah. And Alma didn't give up his job as the high priest. He had both the jobs at the same time.
Right.
So when he talks to the people of Gideon, after Gideon dies, this is so when Gideon dies, that's a huge deal, right?
Mhm.
It's when we first see oh my gosh, what's their horrible names? The guy who kills him.
Nihor.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, the Order of Nihor. So it's a huge deal. The Order of Nihor, like, they have become a much more major presence. It's a political crisis. It's not just a theological crisis, as Moore points out. It's a political one. It is huge all over the place. In fact, it's a great example of what people might feel about right now.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
And let's see. Oh, this is the 1981 edition, so it has the time. That's great. So 90 BC is when.
Oh. Do they not have that anymore?
No, it's in the chapter heading. It's not in the corner.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I hadn't noticed that.
Yeah, it's true. If you go look at the brand new ones, the time is listed in the
heading
and
instead.
chapter heading, and it's not in the corner. I liked it better when it was in the corner.
Yeah, corner's kind of nice.
And also because the corner had the footnotes saying which verse it was that proves what date it was, which is only for the nerdiest. Whereas the other one, it's like, no, we're not going to explain it. Who cares anyway?
Okay.
That's what.
Yeah.
So, chapter 1 it says about 90 BC. Chapter 2 it says 87 BC.
Okay.
And then chapter 7 he goes to visit the people of Gideon. He's like, I'm so sorry about Gideon, man. 83, 7 years. The guy, like, could you imagine? It would be like if the president went to George Floyd's hometown.
Yeah.
7 years later, it's like, feel sorry about what's happened, guys. I've just been busy for 7 years. Like that's what he's. That's how busy he was. That he got up there and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, you guys. I haven't talked to you guys. And how embarrassing.
Huh.
And then afterwards, and then he says, but the reason is because you guys are so awesome. And it's like, I wonder if he's flattering him because he's so bad about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the book, the reign of the judges is hard for them to deal with, and the entire time that they do it, there's always someone trying to assassinate someone. You're right. I didn't think of that point. But that goes back to the original thing I was saying, that the longer that history goes, the greater you get to that. Were you the one who had you said that there's a story? Someone mentioned a story about a sci-fi story, an idea for a sci-fi story about a really, 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 really slow spider.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Was that you?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I think it's like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's going to get you eventually.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I
forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me explain it real quick. So it was kind of like a very Borgesian story, right? So Borges, in a lot of his stories, they were almost just concepts. They weren't even stories. So he kind of wrote stories about stories.
Allegories, maybe.
So anyway, it's just like a little paragraph I wrote of a thought, like, so that the afterlife is, there's this paradise, it has everything you want, but there's this big spider in it, and the spider eats people, but it's really easy to get away from. Like, it's not fast. You can see it coming from a long ways away, so it's not like you're ever going to get eaten by the spider, but it's there. But then the last sentence of the paragraph is, but eternity is a very long time, right? So the point being that, it's improbable, but a given infinite amount of time, the improbable is going to happen. You're eventually going to get eaten by the spider.
One thing I always thought unrealistic about Lord of the Rings is how the elves will just go casually fight orcs. They live forever, but they can still die in combat,
right.
And then they're just like,
yeah, it's no big deal, right?
And it's like, isn't there at least one chicken shit elf out there? No, they're all. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
So the spider is the perfect metaphor, and so I take. To me, I feel like society should be built. I think this will happen eventually in the future. I hate this. The term sounds so cheesy and it sounds kind of like self-esteem, but I think they have a point. That you heard the term self-care.
Yeah,
you heard that.
Oh yeah.
Like they're like we should assume that everyone has the capability. Even if there are people out there, I think there are people out there whose genes and background mean that they would never do anything crazy, and like plenty of people like that. But you can't tell. It's not the kind of thing that you want to say hindsight is 2020 about. It's not the kind of thing that you want to find out about after the fact. You should gear it around prevention, and I think, and so I think there should be, this has come up. There should be required government service, for a year or two, like they do in Europe. I don't think Americans will ever go for it, but that's a policy, an actual policy that you could actually put into place in today's world that mirrors that. The way Portugal handles drugs, legalizing and regulating prostitution, I think would be a very good thing. Lots of different stuff like that, to just say, let's assume anyone can become a crazy person, and we should have systems in place to handle that. And especially when so much of our economy is more service oriented, and we don't, like, women will take care of each other that way. If a woman has a bad day, almost all of them, they have at least one person who's going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to drop everything and come help you, and men aren't at that point yet. Like, women don't want to do it for them, men don't want to do it for them. I guess gay and bi men will do it for each other, but straight men pretty much mostly. I guess maybe that will improve with time, but I just think that's a thing that's going to go there in the future. So yeah, I don't know. I hope that we covered that to Jack's satisfaction.
Yeah, well, yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about the church organization, right? So
Yeah. We didn't.
So this idea with Clayton Christensen. So do you think that happens already, or do you think that needs to happen more? Because you mentioned that it's an excellent
thing needs to happen more.
That it does need to happen more.
That
we need more to import new ideas, I guess. Disruptive innovation.
I mean, there's a thing Johnny said where it's like, you don't want to just do it for its own sake.
Right.
Only for that. I think the main, what did he say? It was, diversity for diversity's sake. It's not that. I mean, there's lots of diverse, crappy opinions, but you need, there's lots of good opinions. There's lots of good ideas. There's lots of bad ideas. But it's better to, I think it's, to put it really, really, really reductively, it's better to have 5 good ideas and 5 bad ideas than 2 good ideas.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, there's the error, but once you get through the errors, if you do what the Book of Mormon says and live by grace and forgiveness, so that you can all work through mistakes together as people, then you would have the 5 good ideas. You would know which one is one, like that you may learn for yourself. That's why we came here, right? And theology, you would know which ideas are the 5 good ones and which ones are the 5 bad ones.
Yeah.
But you can't do that until you sift through the crap. And that's, I mean, I'm sure there's a version of this in other branches of Christianity, but I just feel like a lot of Christianity is just kind of like, well, you try your best, in the end, Jesus saves you, and as you learn about him, you learn great things, and they don't seem to, and they focus on the forgiveness and the grace, and Mormons suck at that, and that's super important. But like, there just needs to be, I don't know, it's hard to. It's hard to explain.
Well, like the transformation of the character.
I guess the eternal progression, eternal progression thing. I think LDS people are just way more conscious of that. Like, even
yes.
Like I've met a lot of clergy, and it's a mixed bag, just like it is anywhere else. But even my secular dad said, who thought church was boring and he's never going to become LDS in a million years, he said he was really impressed by every bishop he met. I guess he was lucky. No, but seriously, bishops overall, he would say, they didn't have that chip on their shoulder that most men have, like, I'm better than you. They like actually had humility.
Yeah.
It was just kind of more like, what is the right thing to do? It's like it's not who wins. It's not who's smarter. It's not who figured it out first. It's just, hey, everyone, what's the right thing to do?
Yeah.
And it's disappointing to me because right now I feel like in the world, non-religious people, as individuals and in small groups, understand this better, and religions overall are not getting that, and that's why their influence is diminishing because they don't have the humility. And the church still has, well, I guess it depends who you ask. To me, the church overall still has some humility and still hangs on, but that's very debatable for some people. Kayla would not agree with that, I'm sure. But
I know what you mean. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of bishops I've had, and it seems like they're generally not like. Well, I guess I have this idea of, without thinking of anyone specific, the kind of CEO sociopath. It's like somebody's really good at running an organization and getting the numbers and all of that, but is also a sociopath. But it doesn't seem like most of the bishops I know are in that type of.
No.
They're not there.
I mean, I've heard of them, but I've had the fortune, and I've had lame
probably more as mission presidents. No, I'm joking.
No, I've heard of that too. My mission president was kind of one of those. Only my mission president was very, very. He was very wealthy, very conventional. One of his kids is married to one of Elder Holland's kids, so just one of those powerhouse.
Mm-hmm.
The SLC knows who this guy is. He's from Bountiful. But he did know how to be warm and how to stop himself. He had this standard. He was like I don't know. He was like a robot who knew how to stop himself. Kind of like the closest comparison I could think of is Mitt Romney. Sometimes Mitt Romney is really stiff, but then there's times where he can get a hold of himself and he really shines and is a warm person. Kind of a thing.
Yeah,
kind of like that. Yeah.
Those are the moments where people either decide that they hate him or that, wow, this guy's different, whenever Mitt Romney does something unusual, I see just this kind of bewilderment, whoa, where does this guy come from? He's not following the script.
He was not nearly as charismatic as Obama, but if you could get him to let his hair down, he's great, I think. But the diversity and this is why I have such a hard time, why I lean more with the pragma people, because they are more open to the different ways of doing things, and some of them really beat dead horses. I understand that, but the alternative is this is a good segue. Is the people who are just want to keep things the way they are, and it's that's not possible. And I mean, the church by definition is a church that really rocks the boat. I mean, Joseph Smith prayed and said, "What church should I join?" None of them. There's a new one. And then, hey, go get your own revelation. And then it's if people say, "Hey, I think maybe we should do something different," and a lot of people's automatic response is no. And it's how is that in the spirit of what Joseph Smith or the Savior, I would argue, would go for? Mm-hmm. And this is why this is something that I've been curious about, and I can't really, and I don't think the forum is really the appropriate, is an not appropriate, effective place. But I don't get why. I want to sincerely know why you're so into classical Christianity and the Nicene Creed Trinity, because I just hate that stuff, and I don't, and I just don't get the point of it.
So Nicene Creed is, I think, is a fine way to look at things. I mean, I don't think it's, I don't see it as much of a absolute truth as it's taken to be in traditional
But
Christianity.
you like find it beautiful or interesting in a
Well, I
sense,
think
at least, right?
it makes certain sense. I mean, basically, it's there to resolve the issue of how to have a monotheistic faith that accommodates
Yeah.
Father, Son, and Holy
So,
Ghost,
so,
right?
so I don't remember the name of those puzzles, but you know those puzzles where they have like the grid, and they tell you 5 people got 5 different things for lunch on 5 different days, and then they say Todd had a taco on Tuesday but not Thursday, and Michael and Johnny had tacos on Wednesday but no other days of the week, and then you have to
Mhm.
figure out from which things have been supplied, which things to cross
I
out,
love
and then
those puzzles. I haven't done
okay.
those in years, but those are fun. Yeah,
Yeah, my wife loves them too. She got my kids doing them, like it's
yeah.
required homework. I'm like, oh,
Send me some. I want to do those.
but but to me, it's like they like historical Christianity is just kind of like, well, we tried all of these theologies and they're not logically inconsistent, so this is the only thing left.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know, you know what I mean? It's like we eliminated all the wrong things and nobody found the one right one.
Yeah.
And given everything that I've said up to this point, you can imagine what I feel about that kind of approach to religion, or the nature
Mhm.
of God and stuff like
No,
that.
yeah. I mean, I don't really think it's the last word. And I guess,
Sure.
yeah. So the Nicene Creed isn't necessarily something that invigorates me. But
Ooh, okay.
but
Uh,
as far as monotheism, I mean, I do think that there. I can't envision an understanding of reality where there is not something behind it, something that is not uh, contingent. There has to be some first principle behind it all.
God before, right?
Yeah, right. So what that is exactly, I don't know. I mean, I think the Brahman idea kind of points to that rather well. I think that's one of the best versions of it. I think the Trinity is kind of trying to do the same thing, but it has to accommodate Scripture, right? Because the New
Sure.
Testament, especially, it's not an easy fit, right?
Right.
And even the Old Testament's not an easy fit. There's a certain narrative in it of very, I guess, metaphysical monotheism. So, you know, this idea that there is only one that's the source of all. But that's only, I mean, that's only one, right? That there's also this idea that's a little bit hidden, but you know, not too hard to find, that there's a council of gods, and not quite as concerned with what's ultimately behind it all. It's more just, okay, you know, there are these divine beings, and the Lord is one of them in this council. Maybe the son of El, you know, in the Canaanite religion. So there's definitely some vestiges of that too. So the Bible doesn't fit cleanly into that, but it does make sense to me that yes, this God behind God would be there. Yeah, that would be
Okay.
a true thing.
To me, okay. So I have a question. You said you liked the Atman Brahman thing, but
Yeah, yeah.
in the end, how is that different than a God after? Because to me, that just kind of seems like it can slide into pantheism or Big Bang Theory. You know what I mean? Like, what's the difference?
Um, Between, okay, so like with a God before and pantheism, what's
But
the difference between those two?
no. If you're gonna say that you could accept an Atman versus Brahman difference, how is that not the same as just saying God after? You know, because when I see that,
Yeah.
I think it's people. It's kind of like Native American respect for nature type
Mm-hmm.
thing. Like we are the supreme, we are the dominating race. God, whatever it is, God. If you say God is just like the universe itself, put Adam on the earth, gave him dominion. He still has no idea what the hell's going on. He just
Right.
knows better than the ants and the deer and the fish and the birds, right?
Mm-hmm.
and that's all there is. And that's how you could put. That's one of the hundreds of ways you could interpret the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
Story.
That's
right?
an interesting point. Yeah, and I guess Brahman. Yeah, you're probably right. That does lend itself more to pantheism. Yeah, because what I'm thinking of is less pantheistic because what is most ultimate would be prior to the physical universe. So it wouldn't be just equivalent to the universe.
But I mean, is there is it like is the reason that you believe in it just kind of like it's a feeling in your bones? Is it because it's logical? Is it because
no, well,
it's better than the alternative?
A little bit of both. But I think I find the cosmological argument convincing that everything that has a cause, everything that began to exist has a cause, and that there has to be some point in that chain where there's something that didn't begin to exist and doesn't have a cause. That's the first cause. Now, I don't think that is a clinching argument that can't be.
Does this mean that you're not a fan of If You Could Hide to Kolob?
In which respect?
The last verses where they keep saying
that there is no end.
There's no end. There's no beginning. Which?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I guess so.
I've always had mixed feelings about that hymn because it gets quoted so much. It's because Eliza R. Snow wrote it, right? I think.
I think it was W.W. Phelps, but
was it? No.
Let's take a look.
Oh my gosh, I feel so bad that I can't remember that. I'm out of touch. I forgot the Order of Nehors, dude. The TBMs are. If you could. Song by Nick Sales. Shut up, Google.
No.
Actually, performed by that.
Let's look at Wikipedia. They'll lead us. No,
I'm on the actual DS page. It should say at the bottom. Where is it? It is W.W. Phelps, huh? Where am I getting? What did Eliza Snow wrote?
She did. Oh, My Father.
That's what I'm getting it mixed up with. Oh, My Father. Yeah.
Yeah, which is not the original title, as I recall, but.
Well, that one's just more about divine. That's just about Heavenly Mother. That's whatever, you know. So right. No, so the thing, yeah. So W.W. Phelps writes this hymn, and people quote it all the time, and it's got so much respect from the general authorities. But there's no prior for it. Like he just busts that out.
Yeah.
And there's nothing else beforehand to say, hey, he's getting it from this thing Joseph
from
Smith
something,
said. No, there's not like there's things that suggest Joseph Smith may have believed.
Yeah, well,
in that hymn.
You know, W.W. Phelps and Joseph Smith were pretty tight.
Yeah, that's true, but still, you would think there'd be a stronger paper trail.
Yeah, no, well, that's the thing. Is my understanding. It's funny that. I'm bringing this up because I was thinking that before we were talking today how much I'm neglecting Mormon history recently. But as I recall, W.W. Phelps wrote a lot for I think Times and Seasons, and a lot of it was just kind of he was kind of a generator of doctrine.
He was a junior speculator guy like Orson and Brigham.
And Joseph Smith kind of after the fact agreed with some of the stuff he said.
Okay.
Where I remember reading a lot of this stuff is there's a book, I think it's On Heaven as It Is in Earth by Samuel Morris Brown. He talks a lot about W.W. Phelps. He's the guy. Let's see.
All the guys who had a falling out with Joseph Smith and came back are all one of them. Some of them are interesting.
Yeah.
Characters.
In Heaven as It Is on Earth. That's the book.
And it's a book about Phelps?
No, but he's in it a lot. It's about Joseph Smith, really. But
it's another Smith one, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, he talks a lot about because W.W. Phelps also had this poem called Paraclete, I think. Where he gets into this whole chain of being and the various grades of divine beings and kind of like the whole cosmology of heaven. And it's very interesting.
Yeah, it makes me wonder. I didn't even think of this. I wonder if there's like a third category that Osler should do, because quantum physics kind of suggests that there's no before or after either.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like there's the multiverses, there's recurrences, there's I don't know.
Yeah, but, and I know Osler
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say Osler has gone head to head with William Lane Craig about infinity, because William Lane Craig, he's a philosopher of religion, philosopher of time, and has said, Big Bang, that's it. That's the beginning of time, where Osler has argued about infinite series and trans-infinite series, and also about the possibility of multiverses, which Craig doesn't buy into. But anyway, I'm just saying, Osler has addressed that issue.
Okay, sure.
I don't know if he's gotten into quantum mechanics, but I know at least on Big Bang Theory, he said some stuff about it.
Okay. So more you're identifying with classical Christianity as kind of more like, I don't know, your spiritual / suspicion about what the science of the universe is that there's original causes rather than,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more metaphysics than science, because I think science only...
Sure, metaphysics. Yeah. Well, right, yeah. Well, I mean, eventually, if it's regarding metaphysics, but eventually, it could eventually scientifically be revealed if it's... maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. Yeah. My physics is pretty weak sauce. The last book I read about that was the one where I remember Dozen, I forget his real name, the guy who worked with
Daniel, if I remember right.
At DAS 3D, said that multiverses isn't something anyone takes seriously. And there's this guy, and I said, there's this guy who went to Harvard who's like Nobel Prize winner or nominated or something, who's seriously saying, no, multiverses might actually be a thing.
Right, yeah. The many, or was it multiverses or many worlds?
Either, both.
Yeah.
Either, I don't know which. Yeah. I don't know.
The difference between the two.
Yeah. I guess my thing is, I just I'm your typical LDS person who has a natural distrust for Neoplatonism and when Joseph Smith said their creeds are all abominations, your typical person says he's hating on the Nicene Creed and the ancient Christian things. And I think what he really meant is creeds in principle are bad, because you'll never get to the light at the end of the tunnel. It doesn't, like, you get to the top of some cliff and there's just more expanse after that, and it just, because the universe itself is infinitely expanding, which is a fun thing I always like to say when people say, oh well, we should reduce population control. I'm like, that's kind of, it's an inevitable thing. Like the world's gonna grow, So
I agree on both of those points. That I think that's probably more what Joseph Smith, or I mean, I guess it was Christ, right? But that's what was meant, and also that creeds are not a great thing. I mean, I don't want to bash them entirely, but
and so I'm just saying, I think it's an instinctual thing for me. Like, I maybe throw out the baby with the bathwater, because it makes me think, traditional Christianity, which I can't stand, therefore that thing must be bad. But I guess there could be a original thing, and it wouldn't really necessarily.
So how do you hang out with Aaron all the time if you're so?
What about Aaron?
Yeah, well, how do you hang out with Aaron all the time if you're so against the traditional Christianity?
I actually have been wanting to talk to him, because when we did our epic, movie road trip, like seriously, we talked for 8 hours there, 8 hours back. It was seriously, like, the whole thing, you could have made it into like a Sundance type movie. Like my experience going down to that funeral with a guy that I used to work with, who didn't remember that I used to work with him,
You worked at the same company together?
Yes. That's Braden and Val got me a job.
Oh,
and they were in this little, they were like in this room that was like a closet. It was the three of them along a line. It was hilarious.
Oh, funny.
Aaron and Val and Braden. And that's where Braden ended up becoming a super like out of the church, for which at one point Valerie resented Aaron over that, but then she ended up going out too, so whatever.
Right.
And he's like, I don't remember you. I'm like, I worked there, and this is. And he's like, I don't. And he's like, I know those people you're talking about, your boss and the owner's wife and the awkward.
I'm not making this up.
but he was like, I don't remember. You're like, that's okay. We basically never talked. I just got introduced. And but anyway, no. We spent the whole time talking about LDS theology, which I was fine, and Braden, which I was fine to do because that's what he does, and I'm more interested in LDS theology than contemporary one anyway. But if I ran into him again, I have some things I've thought of that I've been meaning to say, but I'm not sure if he's interested in hearing it anymore. He's been a lot more busy, and I know he's been arguing and debating with Kwaku more. And one of I didn't watch the video, but the comments, a lot of the people were like, "This guy's nuts." They're talking about Aaron. I'm like, well, he gets a little into it, but like the things people were saying was like, and I thought to myself, I wonder if he turned up the ham level even more compared to the first debate.
Oh,
I went to the first one. His church is like really close to my work. It's like in walking distance. Like walking 10, 20 minutes I could get to there. And so like I just, and it was at 7. So I literally just stayed at my work and then moseyed on over there for the first one. Mm-hmm. But that's the last time I saw it. It's been over a year.
Oh, okay. I actually want to do, I want to do one.
No. I'm sorry. The last time I saw him was at Red Iguana with you, Doug. The time before that was his first quick debate, though.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, I actually want to do one of these with him. I think that would be a lot of fun. But I'm such a chameleon, because I'll be like total, I'll be like total traditional Christian when I'm with him. But no, I'm just kidding. Maybe not entirely, but I'm like Paul. I switch with whoever I'm with.
I agree with that too. Well, and the people of Blue Abyss are we take great value in experimenting with or appreciating the different kinds of personality traits people can have. And so
sure.
We're all kind of chameleonish, I think. Yeah, it's funny at work. My boss will be paranoid that I'm like being two-faced, and like there's still consistency there. It's just like if I'm going to talk to this tough guy from New York, I have to speak his language.
Right.
And I'm going to talk to some taciturn, really stern lady who's always serious all the time. I got to be a different person. If I'm with jokey, non-motivated person, I got to make a joke to get them to do something for me because they don't care about their job. So
yeah, no, I don't think
I understand what you mean.
That. It's just it's just kind of what you do. I guess, so the way I see the creeds, and the reason I said I didn't want to badmouth them entirely is like, well, I don't like the anathemas at the end, right? So, because it was very much, the history behind them, there's a lot of institutional power behind it, right?
I have a couple of books that, this is another thing that I just wanted to say. Another big turnoff for me was early Christian history. Like, to me, you read LDS history and you're like, oh, I'm not so sure about the church. And then it's like, you go to contemporary Christianity and their first 400 years, it's just like,
Oh yeah, it's a mess.
So whenever they try and say, oh, you guys' history is ridiculous about Joseph Smith, I cannot take their criticisms seriously in the slightest. Not any other religious person. It's like, all religion fundamentally looks absurd to anyone who's outside of it. Yeah. All of them. Yes. Anyway, sorry.
I want to come back to that point because that's actually something I was thinking about today. But first, I want to say on the creeds.
Yes.
Like, if we were to just think of it as like, okay, we're in a society where Neoplatonism is kind of our worldview. How do we make sense of this? And they come up with a an idea that makes sense and it helps them, I think that's fine. And I find a lot of Neoplatonism. Well, I find a lot of Platonism actually makes a lot of sense. I think it's one of those older ideas that I would like to kind of bring back in a certain form, not in the way it was, but a 21st century version of it.
A Neoplatonism.
Neoplatonism, baby. Yep. Okay, that out of the way. I was thinking today about so like early Christian history, early Mormon history, some bonkers stuff going on both ends.
Sure. Yes.
I was also thinking about scripture, right? So like, okay, so what is the Book of Mormon? What, like, is it historical? Where did it come from? And also the Bible. So like a lot of the stuff that bothers people about the Bible doesn't bother me at all. And I was trying to think, okay, why? But it doesn't really.
Me too.
So so Book of Daniel, for instance. Book of Daniel is pretty much thought, well, I hate to say the consensus views like it's established fact, but I think I'm convinced that the Book of Daniel was not written when it makes itself out to have been written, right?
That's almost all of them, really.
Yeah. Right. So, but Book of Daniel especially is quite clearly.
It's one of the more apocryphal books.
Yeah, I mean, it makes itself to have been written, around between the 500s and 600s, probably written. I forget the dates exactly, but let's see. Antiphon's probably
like 200 BC,
300, something like that.
Right.
So, but looking back on it over 2,000 years later, what's a couple hundred years between friends, right? So it's like, oh well, it's old, so. And all of our manuscripts are, the Masoretic text is over 1,000 years old, and it's in there, and it's in the Dead Sea Scrolls and all this. So I was like, okay, that doesn't really bother me. But in a way, it kind of should, right?
Why?
Well, I mean, if the Book of Mormon is a problem, okay, so say. Just for the sake of argument, if the Book of Mormon wasn't written by the people that it seems to have been written by, and then it's
that doesn't bother me in the slightest.
I
understand why it does for most other people, though.
Mm-hmm. So, actually, I just started reading a book on my drive home today, another one by Samuel Morris Brown. But so the Book of Mormon has been described as pseudepigrapha and midrash. So pseudepigrapha being, a book that is written more recently, but claims to have been written by somebody.
It's a piggyback book.
More ancient, right? So Book of Enoch is a classic example.
Yes.
Claims to have been written by Enoch, but it was, more than likely written.
A lot of the Gnostic texts.
Close to the time of Christ, maybe a couple hundred years before that. And then midrash. Midrash being basically a kind of expansion of a text or commentary on a text. And Samuel Morris Brown threw in a third one in there as the Book of Mormon as a targum. So that's basically a translation of another scripture into another language, or I think where Morris is going with it, into another cultural view, right? So
what's really funny about that is that the Book of Mormon is meta. It's like Don Quixote. Have you read Understanding the Book of Mormon yet?
I have,
by Grant Hardy. So one of the coolest parts is when he points out that the Jaredites weren't Christian, and Moroni changes them into Christians. And to me, it's like it's a meta argument for the Book of Mormon's own authority.
Yeah. Yes. Authority as a divine revelation, or in what sense? Because you said it doesn't bother you.
Yeah, as a divine revelation and of the type that you are describing, pseudographic and a midrash. Yeah. And it's very much a midrash, because especially Nephi, he's just like, well, Isaiah,
right.
the Bible, we gotta figure our stuff out here because we're not in Jerusalem anymore, Toto.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's interesting to think of the Book of Mormons in those terms. Like, I guess because I've kind of like I decided a while ago, like I don't really know if I'll ever know the origins of the Book of Mormon, and I kind of decided a while ago, like, oh well, I'm just not gonna worry about that, focus on other things.
By not worried, do you mean that you're indifferent, or do you mean
No,
like
not being different, but I guess
I would care if it's this thing, but I'll never know, so I'm just gonna leave it. More like
yeah, kind of that.
Because to me, I love the Book of Mormon so much. It doesn't matter how atheist I ever got. I think it is a genius, genius work. Like if I were to get a tattoo, it's funny. My dad's not religious, and he's like, "Well, the reason I never got a tattoo." Because he told me this when Hinckley came out hard against tattoos. You might remember that in the late 90s. He's like, we don't get tattoos, and the Polynesians had fits and stuff. And my dad said, well, I'm trying to think about, if you have a tattoo, you have that for life. And I can't think of anything that I've been excited about for more than 20 years. He said that before I was 20. So I should say, Dad, you should get a tattoo. Your kid's name. No. Anyway, but to me, I've been excited about the tower, the Tower of Scorn, and that's my name for it. In First Nephi 8 is a powerful, awesome symbol, and I would get that on my back if I were to get a tattoo. Like just people in a building pointing and laughing at you because everyone has, like remember in Looney Tunes, there's the angel on your shoulder and the devil on your shoulder.
Yeah.
Every single person has a person in that building that they're afraid of having laugh at them.
Yeah.
It could be the ghost of your parents or some friend. It could be your spouse. It could be a coworker. And the sources of shame, they're numerous. There's, what if people think I'm stupid? What if people think I'm ugly? What if people think I'm a bad person when I'm not? All sorts of stuff like that. That really, how you deal with that defines who you are.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry about that tangent.
No, I like it. It's very analytic.
Yeah. And so to me, my theory is that Joseph Smith got like one or two revelations from God and he didn't get any more. And they're like, well, you know enough. Now you got to figure out the rest, kind of a thing. Like the brother of Jared, like God made him do most of the work, and everyone loves to point that out. Like, oh, well, God helps you on the really, really hard parts, but ultimately it's on you.
Yeah.
Like, I think that a lot of Joseph Smith's stuff that he said was speculation or educated guesses. Like he saw something, and it was the process of elimination. It's like, well, now that I've seen this embodied God, I know all this other stuff is crap. Now, how do I pitch it to the people?
Yeah.
To me, it's always salesmanship. It always is. And like, the people like to say, well, the Jews were the original religion. The monotheistic version of Jews that we think of as so ancient started around 800 BC. They stole their religion from the Canaanites and from the Babylonians, I think it was, who stole it from the Canaanites. Or something. I get that mixed up, but it's just, it gets stolen over and over and over again. And so, it's like that joke where people say the Christians call Mormons, religious fan fiction is what the Book of Mormon is. Like, isn't that what the New Testament is?
Yeah.
So it's just that over and over again. The Baha'i faith addresses that really explicitly too. They just are like, they say there's multiple dispensations. There's Moses, Abraham, the Buddha, Hinduism, and Jesus and Mohammed, and I forget the other one. And they're all dispensations because it's like the business thing with Clayton Christensen. Sometimes you just got to reboot it.
Yeah.
Like what's desirable is to patch over and over again. And so if you're going to prevent to our original point, if you're going to prevent the destruction of civilization that's inevitably going to become because of the spider, the eternal spider coming, then maybe what you need to do is to reboot and do it from scratch. And then the hackers will have to start all over again. And I really, really stand by my interpretation of Satan being which means slanderer. I'm sure you already knew that because you're Todd, but the name Satan means slanderer, and everything he says in the endowment is literally technically the truth, but he's using it to be tricky and deceitful. That is what, like, if and to me, it's like, yeah, you could design devices that say, hey, if someone lies, then something's going to go off, right? And so you could still hack that. You could literally trick people into doing bad things for your own ends by only telling the truth.
Right. In certain ways.
You could do that.
Yeah.
And I think, and also at the end, you know, there's three, instead of two-factor authentication, you could argue it's three-factor authentication, right? Because you have four things done three different ways. There's a username, there's a password. Let's see. There's your username. There's your personal password that only you know. There's the personal password that is on the server side that they know, and then there's like a fourth one where you use your body, like your thumbprint kind of a thing. Yeah, that's the last one. And you know, if you're gonna have an immortality device, and make it so that it's secure, that's maybe the only way you could do it. And in the end, the only way to affect other immortal people would be everyone would have to gang up on them, so to speak. I don't know. I just love the different possibilities the Book of Mormon brings to our mind. Like, what if our world, and there's a lot to suggest that our world is a mistake. It's not the world it's supposed to be, right? Like, it wasn't. Everyone says. I don't think they were supposed to take of the fruit. I think that it was they thought it was inevitable. Well, no, they were supposed to take it. I just think God was supposed to give it to them. In fact, a lot of people think that the God of Satan says, "I'm the God of this world." And let me ask you: when you first heard that, did you think he was lying through his teeth? Because I did.
I interpreted it as that the people in this world worship him, so he's basically the de facto God of this world.
It's a half truth, a half lie.
Yeah. I think that's. I guess I was 18. I think that's kind of what I thought.
No, that's a better interpretation than I had, in my opinion. I just thought he was lying straight up.
Oh, okay.
But that phrase was not Joseph Smith's phrase. He cribbed it from 2 Corinthians 4:4.
Right.
Paul calls him the God of this world, and Paul in Ephesians and so many other Gnostic texts, there used to be this element in Christianity that there was a Loki type figure, and to me that's part of the restoration. That no, there is a bad God. We just don't want to talk about it because it can get out of hand.
Yeah.
But if you're going to have a society of gods, eventually one of them is going to go off the rails. And what's your plan for that? Jesus is your plan for that. You know, so to me, it all kind of ties together. Mormonism is you know, it's not just about about the authority and about, oh boy, new scriptures. It's just kind of like, it is a perfect, like the Book of Mormon perfectly addresses the future amazingly well. Like so many things that people say about it, they're like, well, this was covered, and it's like covered in some book that came out after 1830. A lot of it to me. Just the kind of stuff that's in there is really sophisticated and very, and like there's in postmodern, like it's just so ahead of its time. It really is. And if you are the kind of person who knew and saw what he saw, he probably said, I'm going to have to bring Jesus into this. I can't tell people to be secularly religious because they can't handle that yet. And incidentally, even though I am kind of a secular-ish type person, I still believe there's a strong possibility, like a sort of secular Jesus figure. Like I think I mentioned in the forum once that in the Ramayana, Ravana, the demon guy, had a boon from Brahman that no immortal could kill him. Right. So oh my gosh, Vishnu was like, I guess I gotta kill an immortal for him then. Like he basically had to hack the bad guy back. Just endless hacking over and
Yeah.
over again, because that's the other thing. The bad guys can be hacked too. It's an eternal war over and over again.
Yeah.
It's kind of like how our government has intelligence services.
You're talking hack as in like rig the system. Or do you mean like?
Yeah, like not chopped. Like hacking as in using a thing for something other than its otherwise intended purpose, which was normally in there's social hacking and computer hacking and blah blah blah, and who knows how technology and biology works in the future, but there will still be hacking. I'm sure of it. And all the sci-fi writers keep saying that over and over again, like, especially cyberpunk, which has fallen out of favor now. It's all about dystopian stuff, but the cyberpunk stuff is still true. It's still relevant. And I feel like such a nerd saying this, but to me, the Book of Mormon is cyberpunk, kind of.
Nice.
A little bit, without the technology.
Can you give me a distinction between cyberpunk and dystopian? I'm just not familiar.
So cyberpunk. Have you William Gibson or Neil Stephenson?
I know William Gibson. Yeah.
Cyberpunk is like kind of it's like, I'm not an expert on it, but my understanding is cyberpunk is kind of like rogue hackers and anarchy and different, and everything is very corrupt, but there's still rogue actors and forces for good even within a really inherently corrupt system. Like if you have a super corrupt society that's filled with 1 billion people, there's still people who are going to get away with having healthy normal lives, and so those are the interesting people, right? The people who still get away with crap in a bad society. Whereas like dystopian stuff, I mean, like Hunger Games is really in vogue, I guess, the last 10-20 years. It's just about worlds where, or Ready Player One even, like,
right. Well,
the world has gone to crap and it's post-apocalyptic.
Well, it doesn't dystopian have a facade of utopia? Isn't that usually an element of it?
So dystopian means it's utopia, but it's someone else's utopia. It's very bad.
Because I was thinking of Hunger Games, how like in
like a Third Reich kind of thing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, in Hunger Games, the capital is a utopia, right? The capital is wonderful and all this, but it subsists on oppression and exploitation of all the districts.
Right. Yeah. Right. Which is very much a reflection of the times we live in. All sci-fi is always addressing the present, even as it thinks about the future. And to me, the Book of Mormon and the LDS Church, and all that stuff, it's just kind of lost my train of thought.
It's okay. I wanted to ask you. So like Joseph Smith receiving his revelations, communion with God. Maybe he receives one and then takes it off from there. But behind all that, what do you have a view of what is going on behind all that? Like, what is God like, or what are the heavens like?
Well, like I kind of hinted at it before. I feel my current theory, the one that has sat with me the longest for the 10 years, is that there is Elohim is plural, God's lowercase. It's a society-based thing, and the endowment really, there's like the endowment to me is not about a dad and his kid and his naughty older brother. It is, and the argument at the end where Satan gets cast out, to me, transpires over months or years in a public situation, war in heaven thing, and it just escalates until finally they all say you're done. But and that like, because the whole thing's symbolic, it's all supposed to be symbolic. If it's supposed to be about literal events, that's my favorite interpretation. Is there's a guy, they finally caught him, and the way they had to catch him was through a Jesus type figure, and now we have this crappy world that is crappy because the god of it was Lucifer, not the council. To me, Lucifer, the key line that he says is, why are you doing something bad for something I've done in other worlds? people think that Lucifer wanted to change things up, and that's why he was a rogue. That's not why he was a rogue. He was a rogue because he wanted things to stay the same. And that's where the real supervillains come from. People who lose things dear to them, right? Well, my family died. I lost my job. Like every supervillain in Batman, every plausible supervillain origin story is some person who didn't get what they want and things changed for them in a really horrible way. Like they're or Two-Face. My face got maimed. I lost my arm. I lost my job. I lost my home. I lost my family. Something changed and I can't roll with it. That's where all the evil comes from, is I can't deal with that. That's what Buddhism is always about, right? Well, all the religions are, but the way Buddhism would say is you're too attached. You need to let go. You know, look at the other good thing. There's other good things out there. Why don't you focus on what you have instead of obsessing over what you lost? Because nothing is permanent. So he's like, well, I'm just doing that which has been done in other worlds. And he's like, I gave the fruit to them. And again, he's always telling the truth, but he's just being a smart ass. He's like, it's like, it wasn't your place. It was you jumped the gun. But because you went and you gave the fruit to them, you were the one, you did it without permission. And it sounds like it's an unprecedented event. Like no one has ever done this before. What in the world are we going to do? Like, right? And so now we're stuck. And even at a purely symbolic level, you could treat this world that way. Like, just what if this world was a big fat mistake? Everyone keeps saying that, right? And that was one of the best arguments I got against Aaron. The only thing I got against Aaron in the car, I treasure this because he had great responses, and I learned. He gave me some responses that other Christians never given to me, and I said to him, he's like, why do you guys like? And this is the thing that he said to Quaker in the first debate. He's like, why do you guys obsess over being creators yourselves? Like, God's the one who did that, and you won't surpass him. And you know, and I explained to him, wouldn't God want to make other gods? You know, that's what a Mormon would say. And he's like, okay. And he's like, well, he can't do that. He's the only one. But the closest thing after that would be to make people who can appreciate how awesome he himself God is. I'm like, okay, that's a good explanation. And then this one I got him on. I said, okay, so if God, and he said, well, God could make the world any way he wants to. It's his pleasure. That's something they said. And I say, okay. If God wants us, if the sole purpose of his creating us is so that we can worship him and recognize his glory, then why did he make a world where we pretend to be him by being parents, and then he takes that away? Shouldn't this world mimic the next one? Isn't it what the Bible keeps saying over and over again? And he didn't know that. And I'm like, and I said to him, like, you know, Mormons don't have the history. They don't have as old or as awesome of text, though I still think the Bible is amazing. But I will concede the Bible is prettier and much more varied. But it's not a fair comparison because the Bible is Ta Biblia, the books, over thousands of years. And so, of course, it's got that leg up. But the Mormons have this story. Their story makes sense. The Christian story does not make sense, and I do not find it fulfilling. It's just like, you know, Muslims are the same thing. Well, who are you to challenge God? It's like, you're the one who's talking about God in the first place. You know, like, it's like there needs like, if there is a God, any religion that is going to bring you closer to him should have an explanation that makes sense at some level. And the LDS plan of salvation, as trite and simple as it is, it is a base that covers why things are the way they are here. You know, you're here to be with people and to be with family. And one thing that I will say about the Jews and Muslims that they have right is they focus a lot more on material things. They're like, in heaven you'll get to have delicious fruit, and the weather will be nice and stuff like that. And that's kind of more practical. And I think that's probably more what heaven's going to be like. You know, will we be, I kind of have empathy or some sympathy, some Mormon transhumanist sympathies I don't really care whether my body is going to be made of metal or flesh or both. You know, it's awesomer than the one I've got here, is what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I don't have one, like the Scientologists say, then whatever. You know, if there's an afterlife and there's a God who's not a dick, then whatever it is better. I'm not as interested in that.
Yeah.
Alma obsessed. One part I really identify with in the Book of Mormon is when Alma says to Corianton, "Look, God will reveal to you the things you care about, and the resurrection is something I care about." He says that. I don't care about that. I care about civilizations and how they're intact. I care about. I've always been curious about Satan for some reason, and scriptures and just kind of like big picture stuff.
Yeah.
The details, Jesus and Satan as people, I've focused on a lot, but like resurrection or sex in heaven, it's fun to speculate about, but to me, I don't get what the big deal is. There's going to be like the Gnostic texts. I love those. They have some stuff about there's a book where they have like engineering credits. They're like, this guy made the foot, this guy made the toes, this guy made the. It was like nice. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. It was from a book that was maybe, I don't know, between 200 BC, 280, and there's a story about Yaldabaoth, who was like a secret creation. It was basically someone masturbated without permission, and so they made this mini crappy half god because they did it without someone else's help.
Right.
Which to me, it's like, did the person literally masturbate like a frog and make someone, or did they just like engineer, like build a robot, like build a cyborg that they shouldn't have? It doesn't matter. Like the principle is, don't go creating. Don't be Frankensteining on people.
Yeah.
So every all those stories in LDS theology, whether they're literal or symbolic, I just find them all tremendously useful.
On the literal,
that's why I don't care about the Book of Mormon's origins so much. And as far as the Bible being, the Bible, we know so much about it that a lot of it is like simply made up, inspired as all get out, super inspired, amazing. But a lot of it is just kind of like, it's not, you weren't the first. I mean, if we're going to go to, I'm the oldest, therefore I'm the awesomest, that goes to the Rig Veda, the Hindu, the Hindu, you know what that is?
Yeah.
The Rig Veda is that thing's 4,000 years old, and they've proved it. That book hasn't changed. Yeah. That book is super old and super long, which great for it. But
right.
If you're going to go with Western religion, that's not what Western religion has. But Western religion has always been disruptive. Clayton Christensen, B. Hinckley, bring what you have.
Yeah. I'm interested. So like on the literal and the symbolic, I mean, I think, did you say you were kind of secular as well? Or because it doesn't, like a lot of the stuff you've been talking about doesn't sound secular in any sense, but or are you just indifferent to it?
To me, I feel like I said a bit back. I said I think the people who God is with more than anyone else in general are. So there was an article. I think this was posted in the forum. They said in WAPO, there was an article about Maryland. What's her name? What was that crazy Democrat candidate lady? Woman.
Williams?
Yes, Marianne Williamson. I kept saying Marianne Robinson, but that's the author.
That's the author,
Marianne Williamson.
And I mixed those up too.
Yeah. They said, and they're like, you shouldn't make so much fun of her because seriously, like, the way she is like what a third of the country is like spiritual, but not identifying with any spiritual specific religion. You know what I mean? And that's who the golden contacts always are. It's not someone who's in some other religion. It's someone who wants a religion and doesn't have one. And so to me, if I, as far as I don't know what the leaders of the church know, but to my spitball take would be, our real prime audience should be not other Christians, not atheists, but more the agnostics and the I don't think about it.
Yeah.
And to me, if there really is a God, then it doesn't matter how God is using. Well, I mean, it does, but it doesn't. It doesn't. It does if you want to, for perfecting yourself and you want to know the truth. Mm-hmm. It doesn't if you're trying to accomplish His work.
Yeah.
And to me, as a parent, you lie to your kids all the time for good reason. Like a lie, like I can't like. There are people who are like lies are bad and truth is good, and like it's not. That's not it. There's cruel truths, mm-hmm. and there's kind truths, mm-hmm. and there's cruel lies, and there's kind lies. Mm-hmm. It's why are you telling the truth? Why are you telling the lie? Mm-hmm. You can do it to be a jerk or to be loving, on either side. So to me, I'm open to all sorts of possibilities, but I'm not obsessed with that the way a lot of. The debates between TVMs and XMOs about the validity of the Bible and the Book of Mormon and horses in America right. and Kuma and and tapers and farms, and I'm so not interested in that. Or chiasmus. It's like it's cool, but like it's not going to really convince anybody. All it is cheerleading.
Yeah, and
every religion has that. There were Muslims who came up to me on my mission bragging about the Quran, and I'm like, wow, this is just like us. Like this sounds. Yeah. I can see why this would sound cool to you guys, but no one else cares. So I try to stay away from that.
Yeah,
and say this is something everyone should find cool.
Yeah,
like with Aaron, I said, Aaron, like surely the part where Alma talks about. He keeps obsessed. He obsesses over that verse about grace after all we can do, which if you look at it grammatically doesn't even necessarily mean that, but whatever.
Right.
But and I said, you know what? There's when Alma is talking about when he was out and how he said, "Oh, blessed Jesus, save me." Like, what do you got against that? And he's like, "Oh, that chapter's good." I'm like, okay,
Right. But he doesn't think the Book of Mormon is what it claims to be, so that's a problem.
No, it is. Well, he's already made his mind up. But I'm just saying, if I were to run into some other Christian who's not nearly so intense or as educated on matters as Aaron is, I would.
And you're not as concerned about that.
And they say Book of Mormon is not a Christian book. I would bust out the chapter where Alma talks about being saved by Jesus. I think it's Alma 26. He's like, "Oh, blessed Jesus, have mercy on me." When he says that should speak to them, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And every story, like all the LDS stories are amazing because they have potential like they have things to teach us, whether they're literal or figurative or both. Right. I suspect many times it's both. Mm-hmm. It's like here's and that way you can arrive at some people will need the literal truth before they learn the figurative one,
right,
and vice versa. I've learned so many things in life out of order. Like I learned tons of things before other people, and then there's other things I've been way late to maybe you felt like this, like I'm way late to the party, and it's like, everyone's got to learn in their own order.
Yeah.
And that's the church is built for that because everyone's at a different step, and that's why I don't like classical old Christianity because they say step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Not just as far as which ordinances you do, that part we do. Hold on, we say baptism, confirmation, but all the rest, like what order you learn about stuff, like how your relationship with God goes, it's personal, mm-hmm. which is what life is going to be like in the eternities. It's all personal relationships, and the church captures that better than any other Christian one easily.
I sense like, because I guess I was kind of geared toward a certain question that I guess doesn't seem quite relevant, because you remember that one time Jared mentioned he was talking with somebody about Mormonism, and then the person asked point blank, like, "Well, do you believe it?" And then I posted that meme.
It's always a great story.
Like, oh my God, you can't just ask if they actually believe it. But that seems like not even a meaningful question between us. What
I mean,
discussing right now.
to if someone said that to me now, I would say, which part? You know, you know, other churches think about the whole package, and you know, Mormons is way more pick and choose. Like I can't, like, we've been to Sunday school enough to know that not everyone was equal on everything. Like I've never been strong about even when I was a teenager, especially after the first time, like I have never had a strong testimony of the actual power of the temple ordinances. Now, the things that are taught in the temple, the actual text of it really speaks to me, as I've already covered. But the actual power of it, you know, I'm not, you know, that's hard for me. Other people, man, they go to the temple and they're like, oh, I feel the spirit all the time, and like I feel so close to my ancestors, and I'm like, that's not me. And then there's other people, and then there's other people who are like, I can't get it. Like my wife, she does not like the Book of Mormon. She doesn't like the scriptures in general. Actually, she likes the songs. She likes going to church, and being with the people. You know, everyone has different favorite apostles. I mean, there's some more and less popular ones, but no one has the same opinion. And so to me, it's like, to me, deep down, I'd say, no, not my answer now is not enough to identify as an active, participating guy, but enough that I go with my family and identify with it culturally. I've covered that in the forum. I don't want to beat on the game.
But it sounds
I don't feel there. But here's the thing. My dad. First off, my dad is an LDS, and before I went on my mission, there was a time when I was like, I'm not sure if I want to be LDS anymore. I'm not sure if I want to go on my mission. And my non-LDS parent is the one who says to me, well, hey, you know, you don't need to be in a rush to burn bridges. So when it's like your non-LDS dad is like, hey, maybe you should just chill out on this before you make any quick decisions, that kind of makes me a little more even-keeled. I'm very lucky to have had that experience. And then the other thing is at BYU, on the 100-hour board and stuff, like I have known a lot of people who have left the church. And to me, leaving the church is the same as joining it. There's many different ways that can happen, and some ways are better than others. I really liked what Jack said, where he it was so amazing and simple, and it was like a tip of my tongue thing, and he said it for me. He said he said there was a point where like he agreed with 40% of it, disagreed with 20, and then the other 40 he wasn't sure. So that means that he wins out and you still identify it. And then he said it changed to I agree with 25, and then 50 I think he said I know is wrong. 50% I know is wrong. 25 I agree with. The other 25 I don't know. Then it becomes, the majority of me says no, therefore I can't in good conscience, blah blah blah. So I've been saying to him, man, I don't want to go to church,
right?
But I'll go if you want me to. And so
well, it's interesting because I mean, you seem like somebody who has just this excess, like just spilling over of belief, or
that love is for the Book of Mormon, which has always been
not just for the Book of Mormon though. I mean, like for a lot of things, like a lot of
I would say my top three are Joseph Smith, which is funny because that's what a lot of people have a hard time with him, but I really identify and relate to him a lot, which maybe says bad things about me, maybe. The Book of Mormon, and then like church government and structure, like the way it is set up, I think. But there's a lot of things, you know, I've been trying to keep like, there's a lot of things I don't like, and we can get into that if you want.
No, that's okay. But you're drawing from Gnostic texts. You're drawing from Buddhism, from Hinduism. I mean, it sounds like
Sure.
you incorporate a lot into your belief, into
Well,
your
I know
life.
there's a God. I know there's a God. I just don't
Yeah.
believe the LDS Church has them. Like the LDS Church says, we have 100%. All the rest of y'all
Yeah.
might have 20, 30, 70% of it, but we got the 100. And it's like, I think if you want 100,
Yeah.
then you really need to do 100 for real, not do this thing, not say, well, we accept all of it, the parts that are right. Like that's kind of a cop out. You know, I get Brigham Young's point, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you still have to do your own Doctrine and Covenants section 91 work. That's the Apocrypha one.
Uh-huh.
At the end of the day, you're going to have to do all that groundwork yourself.
Yeah.
If you really want to know all the stuff, you know.
Yeah, I'll have to review. I'll have to review section 91.
So, no, it's easy. There's the part where they said, "Hey, Joseph, don't you want to translate the Apocrypha?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the extra books of the Bible."
Yeah.
And all Heavenly Father says is, "Well, some of it's wrong, some of it's not. You'll know by the Spirit." It's just basically like, we already translated the Bible. We've got the Book of Mormon. You got the Doctrine and Covenants. Give it a rest, and you have to do the rest. That's basically what that says.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And there's also the book, and then there's also the brother Jared saying there's going to be a book that says everything one of these days. And to me, that's pretty symbolic of the future, not like eventually God will give us the one book that has everything. I think that's more metaphorical. But to me, I do think the Latter-day Saints are among the salt of the earth. And overall, the church is a force for good. I just am so disappointed. Like to me, it's more like I'm one of those, like that Russ, that the Catholic guy that well, if you don't like it, leave. But this is my home, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that? It's kind of like that for me. Like I'm upset enough that I don't want to go. That I just want to go as active. I don't want to resign. I don't want to. I definitely don't want to get excommunicated. I don't want to resign. I just want to live my life the way that I just want to have my, relationship with God without everyone getting all up in my business all the time.
Yeah.
And this church is much better at it than a lot of other ones.
Yeah.
Really. But in the end, I disagree with enough things about their actual. See, this is the thing. If the LDS Church didn't have like temple recommends where they're like, well, to really be worthy, you need to believe and think and do these things.
Yeah.
Then I would just say, and we were more like Muslims or Jews, then I would just say, yeah, I'm Mormon.
Right.
I would.
Yeah.
But the thing about the Mormons is they really, really, the boxes for them are very important, and a lot of them make sense. But it's like I'm not paying tithing the way I used to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in it enough. That I feel comfortable identifying with it. Like I disagree with too many things, and I'm not doing that because it's like the Jack thing. It's not, I'm mad at you because we're different. It's just more like, I feel that if we're honest with each other, that we should part our ways, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like how there's divorces where everyone's pissed, and there's divorces where it's like, we've grown apart and this is what's best for us and we're sad about it and we still like each other, but ultimately it's better for us if we get divorced. Sometimes that's what divorces are like. It's kind of more like that for me.
I feel like this is more of a long-term thing, but I feel like I want to expose like a more positive side of Christianity, like traditional Christianity. Like,
sure. I think you'd be good at that.
Yeah, and I'll have to think about it. Maybe we should have more we could talk a little bit about more what it is that the aspects of it that bother you of it. Sure. Well, because it's very diverse too. I mean, it's not.
So people like N.T. Wright or C.S. Lewis, like the people who have practical things to suggest that you could slightly modify to say, like, look, even if you're atheist, this is still pretty cool. Uh-huh. This is still pretty right. This is still pretty wise, right? Mm-hmm. That's the stuff that you should cling to.
Well, you do. So you do like their theology and their stuff?
It depends. I think that because they were the first, they were they were the first on the scene that like handling grace and Jesus's sacrifice, and how or like in Life of Pi when they go through. You read Life of Pi?
I haven't actually.
Oh, okay. Here's an example. In Life of Pi, at the beginning, he talks to a a local Hindu guru guy, and then he talks to a Muslim cleric, and then at the end he talks to a Catholic priest. And the Catholic priest says, "Hey," he's like, "So what does your God do?" He's like, "Our God came down, and then he died on the cross." And his initial reaction as an Indian kid is like, "Your God came down and he died? What kind of God is that? That guy sucks." Like the Hindu gods were all strong and powerful,
right.
and look at all these awesome stories about their exploits. And then the Muslim God, he's he's like, who would mess with that? Like that's something where there's respect. This guy comes down, he preaches some stuff, and then he just dies like a wuss. Like I don't get. And then it hits him. He says, "Why would those gods, with their adventures, are that powerful and give a crap about me? But this one came down here. This one came down here to suffer and be with us. That's different. That's power." And then through his humility, he ends up being more powerful. So stuff like that. There's a lot of things that Christian. Oh, and there's a great book I love called Religion for Atheists. Like Christianity has, the medieval theologians and philosophers, it yielded a lot of great stuff. It's just the stuff that they harp on the most and the stuff that is the most important to them isn't that stuff. The thing that's most important to them is the "we're right, you're wrong" stuff. You know what I mean? And the Nicene Creed, like, I have an elevator speech for any time someone's like, "Well, are Mormons Christian?" Like if some Christian asked that as a trap, I would say, this is my answer. I would say, it depends on what you define it as. A regular person defines Christian as someone who believes in Jesus Christ, and that he was the Son of God, and that he's divine, and that he died for our sins, and that you must believe in him to get to heaven, blah, blah, blah. In that respect, Mormons are Christian. But if you ask a pastor, a priest, they will tell you that is not what a Christian is. A Christian is someone who believes in the Nicene Creed.
Right. Yeah, well, actually, and
in that sense, Mormons are not Christian.
Right.
It depends on why you're asking the question. It depends on what you mean by Christian.
Well, because the Apostles' Creed is older.
That one's important too, but they always say the Nicene is the most important. It's not creeds, but the Nicene is the most important. That's what always comes up. Aaron told me this. Yeah. Aaron told me this. He's like, "There's a lot of important ones, but that one is the one."
Well, that's kind of interesting because the Nicene Creed is really about a very technical theological detail about Christ's eternity.
Yeah, who cares?
So it's not. Yeah, it's not something that's really central, I would say.
No, why would how could any Mormon think that stuff is important after you?
Yeah.
If you've been raised Mormon, why would you care about that stuff?
No, I don't. The Nicene Creed, what it's about. Even Mormons think it's about the Trinity. It's not really about the Trinity. It's about Christ's eternity and whether he was created or made from the Father. Which, I agree. I don't think that's
in essence
all that important. It might be kind of interesting, but it's not central. Do you mind if I just read through the Apostles' Creed real quick? Because I'm kind of curious now if this fits the elevator speech. So, I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. I believe in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord. He was conceived by the power of the Holy Spirit and born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried. He descended to the dead. On the third day, he rose again. He ascended into heaven and is seated at the right hand of the Father. He will come again to judge the living and the dead. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of the saints, forgiveness of sins, resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting. Amen. So, and Catholic there is understood to mean like universal.
Which the Mormons are not included as part of. Well, actually,
well, by this creed, I think we could be, because
it's the Catholic only became more universal the way we think of it after Vatican II in the 60s.
Well, this is lower. This is lowercase c Catholic. So
when I googled it at Catholic.org, it was capitalized.
Oh, well, of course they would. Yeah.
No, I'm wondering. Now I'm not. Well, anyway, sorry.
Well, you know the other. You know what Catholic means, like the original.
That's true.
Like,
yeah, you're right.
At least that's how I've heard Protestants justify the Apostles' Creed in using it. And I buy into that. Sure. That's fine.
The Apostles' Creed, I don't mind. Like,
no, I mean, I think that's all just standard. That's more central. It's about what Jesus did.
Yeah, but that's not what the Christians harp on. They harp on the fact that Mormons don't agree in the Nicene over and over.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's not central to Christianity. That's central to saying Mormons aren't Christian, which is only without picking on anyone. That's only central to Christians with a very particular focus. Mormon.
There's a passage in the New Testament where Jesus says, 2 men went up to pray, and one of them says, "Oh, I'm so glad, I'm so awesome, and I'm not like this public, blah blah blah, and that I'm saved." And then the other one is like, "God be merciful to me, a sinner."
Mm-hmm.
It's the Ramiumptum, right?
Yeah.
And to me, contemporary Christianity, the majority of that is the former. They're not so much happy that they're saved, so much as that they're saved and you are not.
Yeah, well, so I mean, and I think,
and there are a few of them who are really excited and they love everyone and they're like, I'm so excited for God to save as many people as they can. But universalism is not universal in contemporary Christianity. I mean, there's some, like the Episcopalians are kind of swinging that way more, and then there's of course the Unitarians, but like your Baptists, your Evangelicals, no.
Well, would you remember that one? Did you see the thing Aaron had posted once where it was actually an evangelical gentleman who was saying, talking about the pushback against Christianity, and he's talked about how, I don't remember if he said Christianity or evangelical Christianity, but one of those has become a racket, which I thought was pretty
evangelical. Oh yeah, Jerry Falwell at Liberty University, like some of these guys, I can't even tell if they actually believe in God. I seriously don't know.
And this was a Christian saying it, right? He was saying, I understand the resistance. I understand a lot of negative perceptions because it has become a racket in many circles.
One of my favorite quotes on this is by Walker Percy, who's a Catholic. The guy who wrote Lost in the Cosmos.
Yeah.
And one of his novels, there's this funny part where they're having a golf tournament, and they said this, and there's a banner, and it said, "This golf tournament is dedicated to Jesus Christ, the greatest pro of them all." and something that he once said in like an article or an essay is he said, and he was really salty because he's a Southern Catholic, so he was throwing some serious shade at the Protestants and the evangelicals, and he's saying, you can't talk about religion anymore because people have profaned its name so much to the point that it's been cheapened. He said, people talk about, like the way people talk and pray, and the people talk and pray in public about Jesus, and they talk about grace and this and that and that. They don't give it the respect it deserves. This is a very Catholic sentiment, right? They don't do it with the proper respect, and they just spam it. Like they spam it over and over again to the point that as soon as you say the word Jesus or religion or theology, people's eyes glaze over. And so now what are you supposed to do? That's why Flannery O'Connor
I was just going to mention Flannery O'Connor.
Yeah, Flannery O'Connor's power comes in shocking people. And there's a great book I have, a novel I love called The Instructions, where there's this kid who fancies himself the Messiah, and he overthrows like a Jewish educational school. He gets these kids to like make these modified 2-liter bottles, slingshots, and they shoot coins and the coins hurt so badly that they like actually kill a few adults, like overthrowing this school and stuff. And there's this part where he has this mentor, and he says, and he's not sure what to write. And there's this part where he has like he's like this 9-year-old genius kid, and he's like, well, I used the word motherfucker in it once, and I'm not sure if I should do that. And then the guy straight up says to him, he's like, if you don't say the word motherfucker, no one's gonna listen to you. You have to say that. You have to say that first, and then they're like, what are you talking about? And then you tell them what you wanted to tell them originally. But if you tell them what you wanted to tell them originally, they're just going to tune you out. That's why the only way you can get people to talk about or think about spiritual things anymore is to dress them in superhero capes or make things super violent, or sexual or symbolic. Otherwise, they won't listen. And the Bible kind of follows that.
One of my favorite O'Connor stories is Revelation. Such a good story. So, have you read a lot of her stuff?
I read one collection, and the only one I can remember is like the one in the car where the guy kills everyone or something.
That's a famous one.
Yeah, I'm like, holy crap, this is.
Yeah, a good man is hard to find. Yeah. Revelation. It's about this woman who's in a doctor's office, and there are all these other people around, and she's kind of talking. She's just a talker, right? And she's talking about how grateful she is that Jesus made her, how she is, and that
what's her medical problem?
And she's there with her husband. I think her husband's the one going to the doctor or something.
Oh, okay.
And how she's not white trash, and how she's not black, or if she were black, it would be better to be like a nice cultured black than white trash, because that's
mulatto.
Yeah, and so she's just talking and talking and talking, and then there's this girl who's just like giving her this glare the whole time, and then lunges at her and says, "You are a warthog." I think it's warthog, something like that. Warthog.
Yeah.
And then it just throws her and she can't get it out of her mind that somebody called her a warthog, because it like totally messes with her self-image.
Right.
And it's just like this a revelation of you're not all that.
Special.
But then at the end, there's like in O'Connor style, it's like this precipitous fall, but then kind of a hint at the end of, okay, there is redemption. Possible, but it's usually just hinted at that. So that's why I thought of O'Connor on those lines as well. That is very much the opposite of a Rameumptom or the man going into the synagogue saying, I'm so grateful that I'm not like these other sinners and horrible people and all that.
Yeah,
I'm going to reread that story now, because thinking about it, it's such a good one.
I found this random book at a discount grocery store. It was from the 80s, and it's by this author who he was good, but like no one read him. Kind of like there's a lot of authors like that, like Stanley Elkin or William Gass, kind of stuff. Like the academics know who they are in their time, but then after they die, no one reads them.
Oh, okay.
Or William Gaddis, like stuff like that. And he tells a story about this really irreverent hedonist guy who loses all 5 of his senses by the end of the book, one by one.
Wow.
At the very end. And the very end, he is this husk he's like a quadriplegic who can't hear, see, smell, or talk anymore. And his wife just takes care of him or something like that. And the whole thing's a farce. And basically, and it's hinted at in the book that basically it's a Christian allegory, right? You lose everything kind of thing, but you had to dress it up by making this sensational, funny, irreverent guy. I mean, his name is Simon, of course, after the apostle. And it's just this outrageous book. It's like 600 books. It's really funny and really irreverent and really dirty. but it's really a Christian book. It's in my. You would never. I don't think you'd ever read it, but if you really want, I'll get you the name
Sure,
of it.
sure.
But yeah, it's all, smoke and mirrors, and I like that David Bowie quote where it was in poor taste and he delivered it poorly, but the original intent that when he clarified it was great. It's when he complimented Hitler. Are you aware of that, when David Bowie did that?
No, what was
he said as a rock star he understood why people were attracted to it. He said, well, there's people going about their lives and they're really, really bland, and then here's this guy and he puts on quite a show, and that's not the first thing I think about, but he did.
Hitler's talking about, right?
Yes, he gave great speeches.
Master showman, yeah.
Yeah, he was a showman, and people were bored, and people were despondent, and they needed someone, and that's who showed up. So they followed him.
Yeah.
And again, like just the nature of going back to that other novel, The Instructions, it's written by a Jewish guy, and it's a very one of those navel-gazing type Jewish books, but it's really, the argument is basically there is no Messiah, and the idea of a Messiah is a bad thing, which I think there's good points to that, but I don't think you can get to that point without really, really looking at what a Messiah is to begin with. So going back again, even if it is all made up, I think it is something that you need to get through to really be in a healthy place spiritually. And all the there's different kinds of atheists, and you have your angry, petty, immature ones, and then there's the ones who just, like, you don't mess with them, you respect them, they always know what they're talking about, they're very self-confident, they aren't affected by that tower of scorn, right? And the Book of Mormon says it's because they feast on the love of God, but there are literally people who benefit from that without believing in God. So it's not the love of God that's the point. It's don't listen to those idiots in the building.
I like the
if you need to believe in God for that, fine. But if you can do it without it, it's fine. At the end of the day, we still have to live with each other.
Yeah.
And I believe there's an afterlife, and I believe that there'll be, that afterlife, because we have to get along. So yeah, this bothered Aaron a lot. He's like, well, so you just think it's okay to just go lying to everyone and making crap up all the time? And I'm just like, it's not. And he thinks that's a horrible thing to do, to say, well, make up this story to adults as if they're kids with Santa, and it's like, everyone's a child. That's what Jesus said.
Yeah,
everyone has a blind spot.
Well,
everyone has a thing that if you were to say plainly to their face, Todd, you are blank, 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 blank. Michael, you are this.
Yeah.
You would crumble.
Yeah, right.
There's things. Everyone has a blind spot of something that they are in denial.
Absolutely.
About.
Yeah.
Some less than others.
Don't touch it.
They need to come to that on their own time.
Yeah.
And God and the judicious use of religion understands that.
I keep on thinking of the allegory of the cave and the sun. Because I had thought, because I'm definitely I believe in God, and I consider myself Christian, but the idea of God is, I think it's fine to say, is quite mysterious, and probably beyond anything we can comprehend. So how you were talking about how some things, if God were to give us, to just destroy us. Like, you think if you look right at the sun, it blinds you, right? The sun is this powerful incinerating force, but what we have, mercifully perhaps, are images that are projected by it, and those are the things that we have to go off of. The images aren't false, but they're not
distorted, maybe.
Yeah, they're not they're not a full picture, right? So that's how I see a lot of these religious ideas is they're images that are projected by God, and it's wouldn't be correct to say that they are the source themselves, but they're definitely manifestations and reflections in some way.
Where's it? There's a passage that always gets. Where is it? Where it says that he. Oh yes. Well, this isn't the one. Oh, hold on, just a sec.
No problem.
Let's see. I like in Matthew 13 where they keep saying, "Master, why do you speak in parables?" And he says, and he's like, "Well, it's given to you to know it, but not to them."
Right.
And he says, "For whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have abundance. And whosoever has not, from him shall be taken away in that he hath." And it fulfills the prophecy of Isaiah. I'm paraphrasing here. "By hearing ye shall hear and shall not understand, and seeing ye shall see and not perceive. For this people's heart is waxed gross, and their eyes are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed. Lest at any time they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, I should heal them." So there's two purposes in the parables. First, he needs to be able to teach some things to people, and yet, it's he needs to be able to give the big things to the big. He needs to be able to give the grown-up things to the grown-ups without the kids knowing what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like have you ever seen Little Miss Sunshine?
No, I don't think so.
There's a funny scene in there where Grandpa Alan Arkin is giving advice to this like 16, 17-year-old kid, and he says to him, "Hey man, make sure that you fuck a lot of women. Like, don't go through a lot of that before you settle down, right?" And like the parents are right there, and like he's like, "Dad," and then he's like, "What? It's solid advice, man. Like all the guys who do that, they always make good choices before they settle down." And then they're like, "And what about there's a 7-year-old girl," and they're like, and he's like, "It's fine. She's on her headphones," and she was. And then finally, she lifts her headphones up, and she says, "What are you guys talking about?" And he says, "Politics." and then she puts them right back down. Like they're having this argument about him telling him to like go have sex with like so-and-so's oats. She's like, "What are you guys talking about?" Politics. Right back down.
That's funny.
And yeah,
That's
it's an adorable, hilarious scene. Like in the way he just deadpans, like his delivery is perfect. She looked up on YouTube. He's like, "Politics." Like, I dare you to ask me about the politics. She's like, "Nope." She's like, "Okay." Puts her headphones back on. They continue to have that whole fight for like 10 minutes.
Nice.
And she doesn't hear them talk about sex. It's hilarious.
Oh, that's funny.
And yeah, I think that's the thing that God definitely does, and Jesus definitely does. And people, there are people who think that they don't apply to that, and you can't work with those people. It's like at work. You know how there's people who are like the bottom quartile, and they're just not that great at their job, either because they're dumb or they're lazy or they're tired and old for whatever reason. And then there's two
Everyone is valuable, Michael.
No. And then of those, there's two kinds. There's one type that is like they're aware that they're not the strong performers, and they try to make up for it by apologizing more, or they'll be nicer, or they try to get out of your way, or they'll hurt, or when they make a mistake, they make great efforts to fix it super quickly because they feel bad about letting everyone down.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the people who are bad at their job and they don't know it.
Mm.
You know what I'm talking about? And then you're like, this really needs to be redone. And then they get mad. So that they suck and they get mad at you. That's like, and then the other two categories are the people who do a good job and they have the chip on their shoulder. And then there's the amazing people who somehow are always nice and mentor-y and do a good job at the same time. But the bottom category, like, oh yeah, those ones, right? And spiritual, it's like that Rumi quote, like the person who doesn't know that he's dumb, shun him. The one who knows that he's ignorant needs to be taught. The one who doesn't know that he knows needs to be awakened, and then the one who knows that he knows needs to be revered. I'm paraphrasing, right? Like, and that's the ecosystem of God's beings. You know, the subjects that can worship Him. That's the people you're dealing with, and you have to have a plan where you throw all four of those types in the same room or building, and they get along. And the LDS Church gets that.
Yeah.
And the others don't. So when people are like, well, the LDS Church, the Book of Mormon seems a little fudge. It's like, you got any better ideas? Because I don't think you do.
I agree with the caveat that I think there are some other good Christian churches as well. But
no, I do think that. I just think I think that structurally, if you have a bunch of like-minded people together, you're just at great risk for having.
I see what you mean. The organization, the way the system is set up.
Oh, there are crappy boards. They're we said, they're crappy boards. They're crappy bishops. But like, if you're gonna like if you're gonna have translate LDS Church into secular government, the LDS Church is much better for government for eternity than some other thing. Voluntary basis. People have terms that just expire. You don't seek the office; it is simply given to you. And again, like Trev says, that's how they do it in China. But it ends up being very
right. And
political.
In theory,
it's like a dark version of the church, right? Like
Xi Jinping, who, if you're listening, she, you're wonderful. But no, theoretically, he should step down, or he should have stepped down already. I'm not sure. I don't remember, but it's not supposed to be a lifetime appointment.
Yes.
I have well, I think we'll probably wrap up here in a minute, but I was just thinking of I started listening to this course on logic, but I need to learn more about fuzzy logic, because I have this analogy and I need to know if it actually works. But because I was thinking about so logic, is like, one of the appealing things about it is that it's this clear cut, right? But then I know more advanced or later developments of logic are fuzzy logic, and this is where I don't know if my analogy works. But so something I've appreciated talking with you just tonight is like this comfort with ambiguity, and
gotta have it.
Yeah, you got to have it, and I mean, for my part, it strikes me as an aspect of maturity, and spiritual maturity as well. And I guess my analogy being like, fuzzy logic isn't deficient logic; it's actually a higher level. So
what's the difference between fuzzy logic and regular logic?
I don't know. I need to. That's why I need to know if my analogy even works. But
is fuzzy logic a term someone else made up, or is it your term?
No. It's a real thing. It's a branch of logic. Yeah. No.
Okay.
I
haven't heard of that. That's funny.
Yeah. No. I think it removes some of the usual constraints of.
I'm going to take an educated guess. When logic courses happen, they always go like with math, and it's like if you have the absolute numbers in front of you, then you can compute logic. But most of the time, the data is flawed. You know what I mean? Like most life decisions, you don't get to rely 100% on logic. In fact, that's like, have you heard of the book Thinking Fast and Slow?
Yeah.
So like in that, it's like you can be super logical and yet still be wrong, or like how they point out. I think it was in that book, or there's an economics book where they say that someone pointed out something like, all economists say that people are rational actors, and therefore they'll just do whatever maximizes their own interest or money. And I think maybe it was the first 500 years. I can't remember which book it was. I'm sorry.
Oh.
But he said if you had a person who made $70,000 a year and you go out with some hotshot economics guy who makes $1 million a year, and you both go out to lunch, and the guy who makes 70,000 offers to pay, the guy who espouses the theory that you'll take advantage still won't accept it. Right? He'll feel awkward about accepting the meal. Right. Like, what are you, the guy who has way less money, buying me a meal for? Right? Immediately, that becomes not logical. Like, it's so, people become illogical so quickly.
I think it actually, that does, so I just looked up fuzzy logic because I was like, okay, I know people are listening to this are going to be, who know about it are going to be driven insane. But
oh, no. Does Jared know what it is?
I don't know, but
okay.
probably Jacob does. And Jared probably does too.
So I got the Wikipedia article. I'm bringing it up.
But in the third paragraph, I'll read the definition in a second. But in the third paragraph, it says fuzzy logic is based on the observation that people make decisions based on imprecise and non-numerical information, which is kind of like what you were talking about.
There you go.
As for a definition, fuzzy logic is a form of many-valued logic in which truth values of variables may be any real number between 0 and 1, both inclusive. It is employed to handle the concept of partial truth, where the truth value may range between completely true and completely false. By contrast, in Boolean logic, the truth values of variables may only be the integer values of 0 or 1. So actually, I think that analogy works okay.
I think that's really good. I think
maybe I'll develop it a little bit more. But
people try to apply regular logic to religion when religion is trying to say that's not, life would be easier and simple if everything always could have logic applied to it. But that's not usually what it's like.
From a certain perspective, that type of fuzzy logic could look sloppy or uninformed, but for people who know what they're doing and are familiar with it, they have a more comprehensive knowledge and see that it's actually something more advanced. So anyway, that was my analogy that I was trying to develop it. So that's a first pass. I'll make it better.
Sure. And what's the reason you want to get into it? Because you think that's
you, man.
Theological?
No,
no. I have ADD. And so when I think about a thing, what happens is sometimes in conversation, someone will say something and I will think of 8 different things that thing implies, and it'll be within 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so this is something I only discovered lately. A lot of people, when they think, they have a narrator voice in their head. This was a Twitter thing like a few months ago, and everyone was shocked to find out that not everyone had a voice in their head and vice versa. They're like, really? You have a narrator in your head? Like in the Wonder Years? Like, just whenever you think, you like talk to yourself? Like, I don't talk to myself like that, like ever when I'm thinking. I might imagine a conversation between me and another person occasionally, or imagine what someone's going to do. But I just kind of have this weird...
Bit. Is it narrator or that you actually have words in your head?
Like people will actually, by narrator, I just mean like there's a voice there. Okay. And I don't, like it could sound, I don't mean they narrate their own life. Like they literally will say, they literally cannot think without talking it in their heads.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I did not know that was a thing. There was an episode, and I discovered this also with my wife. She's the opposite of me. We were watching this episode of Buffy where she can read minds, and everyone's like saying what they think. Like, I like you, or oh, you can suck it. I'm like, I never do that when I'm mad at someone. I do not think words of like I hate you or you're an idiot in my head. Like I feel it.
Yeah.
But I don't think the words I don't think the words I hate you or kind of, or post-linguistic. I don't know.
Interesting.
So anyway, I have the 8 thoughts, and then I like automatically make these calculations to say, well, obviously I shouldn't talk about these 3, these 2, and then I like process of elimination it.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of actually what the Book of Mormon does. And when I realized the Book of Mormon does, that made me feel better about myself. It's just kind of like instead of trying to get, and then there's also the discrepancy between my work and home life, where at home logic is not, my wife is smart and she can do logic if she wants, but she doesn't like it in her personal life. She hates it.
Sure. That's defensible.
Yeah, and then at work, my boss and my job, it's like logic 100%.
Okay.
And then the people at my work, like only not everyone wants to hear the logic or remember the logic, but it's my job to
Mm-hmm.
get them to follow logic. So I just get kind of exhausted by it. And so when I'm on the forum, I'm like, oh, this is interesting, but I just don't have the energy to like pour
Oh.
logic onto the forum posts when
Oh yeah.
you know you know and I just think it's overrated. Like I don't do science or math at my job,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not going to discover any new mathematical theorem or
Mm-hmm.
conduct any scientific experiments, and I'm not an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
When Johnny gets on the forum, I feel like it's kind of like I want to put my lawyer skills to use,
Mm-hmm.
talking about something that I want to talk about, not just not work. And he's thinking like, what kind of laws should we pass
Mm-hmm.
is what he's always about, which I respect.
Mm-hmm.
And I respect the
Oh
hell
yeah,
out of
sure.
that. Like that's a thing that happens. And Johnny is an attorney and a person of means. He might actually run for office someday or
Mm-hmm.
be in a powerful position in a company. That's not me. I have ADD. My
Mm-hmm.
wife is disabled. I I didn't have as happy of a home life as y'all have had.
Mm-hmm.
That's something Braden and I have in common. Like when we met saw Braden's mom at the funeral, my wife, and I told my wife about it. Her jaw dropped. I was like, wow, that's what you guys have in common. Like I told her about how she was, I don't she was a character, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, that's like your mom, That sounds like his is a little more crazy than mine was. Mine passed away, as you remember, but
Mm.
yeah, just intelligent woman in a man's world where with a few options and you go crazy from that and then dump it on your kids, kind of thing. Anyway, so yeah, I just and to me, it doesn't matter if you have and another thing that discourages me about logic is in science history, many times people have had correct theories, but no one wanted to give them the money or put in the work to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, every problem is a political one. It doesn't matter whether it's artistic or aesthetic or scientific or mathematic.
Mm-hmm.
If people don't want to listen to you, if you can't convince people, it does not matter if you have the best idea in the world.
Is that what you were referring to?
And that's why the David Bowie quote and the smoke and mirrors in the parables. You have to be. I used to hate, where someone is weak, they are now made strong. I'm like a sales type person now because I used to hate the idea of being a salesperson. Mm-hmm. But it's like the war in heaven is all about persuasion.
Yeah.
So in a way, like, I hate that I sound like this, and I didn't go to the Marriott School of Business, but I'm sure this is what a BYU business class would sound like. The God has to, put his pitch in the council and war in heaven. Well, that's not what happened. He just said, hey, this is what's going to happen. And then Satan interrupted. I hate it when they're like, well, there were two plans. And it's like, no, airtime was never given to Satan. Okay. Satan interrupted.
Yeah.
Satan interrupted. Satan grabbed the mic. Anyway.
I'm going to let you finish.
Yeah, that's seriously what he did. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw you had listed like as topics how all problems are almost inevitably political ones. Is that what you were referring to?
Yeah, I'm like I think this was in Thinking Fast and Slow, or like take medicine. I'll try to cover this quickly. Like take medicine. You can have the level of specialties is like it's like a tree. Like it's like imagine your veins or your aorta, and it just keeps spreading and spreading. Like you'll have someone who specializes in hearts, and then they specialize in this part, and then it's like fifth or sixth branch down. And there are diseases and like body parts and functions that like literally there'll be like 3 experts or 5 experts or even literally one in the entire world of 7 billion people about a specific scientific thing.
Okay.
And this is why I find Johnny and Jared's endless discussion on expertise interesting, but I don't want to get involved in it because I don't feel it's a solvable problem. And they kept saying, and I don't know how to say this in writing without sounding like a douche, but like when I see it, I think they're missing the point. I think it's like they're like John, like they're trying to construct like Jared. It's like Johnny wants to. It's like both of them want to say, well, let's have a set of guidelines that will make this that we can use to deal with expertise all the time from now on. I'm like, or even like, yeah, and I'm just like, it's fuzzy logic. It's endless. It's endless. It's endlessly different, and it's like a randomly generated video game level every single time. And the brilliant politicians, like Hitler or Huey Long or Barack Obama or Gandhi or whatever, they understood this. Like, they're very intelligent, but they didn't get too far. They don't let their head get too far in the clouds because they know that if they do, they'll end up coming across as Woodrow Wilson or Michael Dukakis type leaders. You know what I mean? Like, or Al Gore. Like, you're smart, but you're still behind everyone somehow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for the expertise thing, like, and this is why I wasn't a big fan of W. Bush, and why, and yet reason 973 why I hate Trump is every president, the effective presidents don't know everything. They figure out who does know what they're talking about. That is a really hard thing to do. And like Reagan and Clinton and Obama, they would get these big fat like 60-page reports every day, and the experts give it to them, and then the president's job, it's like the difference between management and the people who actually know what they're doing, right? But a real manager is a great asset, really, right? Like, you know it, like we all know that. And a real manager doesn't just manage the information. They know how valuable the information they have is, and they know it through intuition and qualitative ways, not just quantitative ways. And that's really hard to talk about. It's really hard to talk about, to analyze in a qualitative way in a forum setting. Like there's, you can, like, if you want to be analytical and logical and mathematical, forum's great for that. If you want to share stories or in my case, lots of stupid jokes or funny things, the forum's great for that. But to really dig, and I said this when Jared and Johnny, who both respect each other, but they seem to have a hard time feeling, which I don't blame them. They're just like, I think he's mad at me. Like, they're both sitting in their room thinking that the other guy's mad at each other when they're not, as we know, right? And there's that post, and I just jumped in finally. I think it was the expertise thread. I was like, well, guys, I just think it's the forum. Like, don't be so hard on yourselves.
Yeah.
And so like I said, I'm a better person than in writing. I hope you feel that way. That's how I feel about myself. Anyway, that's my spiel on everything is inherently political. Like, I thought you have the most genius idea ever, and you have to do the salesperson. You don't just have to have the intelligence and the facts. You have to have the political will, the political mandate, the political consent to get anything done anywhere, whether not just government, business, politics, science, sports, video games, anything. It's always
literature, art, music,
anything. Politics comes
sex.
Up, and people, and people say, "Oh, I hate politics," blah blah. But it is an inevitable fact of life.
And I sometimes
and again, Mormonism makes the case to me that will never go away. Well, it's politics for eternity.
I was actually going to say politics all the way down. So
that's a great phrase.
Adam Miller, in his book Speculative Grace, he basically he gets into how everything is political in the sense of deliberation, right, and persuasion.
Sure. Yep.
And actually, I was just looking it up here in the preface. There's this is by, just to get the name here, Levi Bryant, who's a theologian. But anyway, he's referring to Miller's theories here, and he says, if Miller is right, if this is what religion is, why should we call this religion rather than politics? Which is, not a criticism, but just kind of like saying,
no, it's a good question.
That boundary is kind of porous.
Yes.
And politics all the way down. It's suffuses everything, at least in the sense of, that people got to talk to each other and bounce ideas off of each other and build coalitions and
the harder that church and state have been separated. I think this is one reason religion has lost its power, is because a lot of people don't remember the relationship politics and religion used to have.
Mm-hmm.
And even 50 years ago, 100 years ago, I mean, we still had the Constitution, we still had separation of church and state, but it was kind of a more formality. Like it wasn't as emphasized as much. Like you could fudge it. Like you could quote God or the Bible and people wouldn't get pissed at you.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was just assumed to be some type of Christian, but now it's like, don't bring that into public sphere at all. And so now that's one reason religion has lost its power, because it's not allowed to be political anymore.
I kind of feel like sometimes it's done, but in a insincere way, at least on one side of the partisan divide.
Yes, I would agree with that. Though, there's a guy for Washington Post named Eugene something, and he's a black guy who always talks about cultural issues regarding blacks. He often says or retweets people who say it should be separated, and it's like, well, for blacks it's not as simple as that, and
mm-hmm.
so they don't have the option. They couldn't separate it as much even if they tried. So the interesting thing is by default, they are more effective and more frequently mixing the two. And people think it's because they haven't. Yeah, like that their churches will make political statements and get mixed up in it, and a lot of people will make the take, well, that's because they have an axe to grind, and I think that's part of it, but I think also it's because it's an inevitability. If you're a minority, same for Mormons. Mormons try to say, the LDS Church keeps trying to say, well, accept us, we're just like everyone else, and it's like, you're different, and it keeps coming up over and over and over again. Like, think about when Mitt ran for president, like the LDS moment that was. Or when people were like, well, Utah is Republican, but it's like the only state that hates Trump. or Governor Herbert is the only, when immigration was a hotter button thing than it is now. I think 2017, 2018, there was this thing where all the Republican governors signed this thing saying, like, well, it's important to keep immigration straight and support the president, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of incendiary. And Governor Herbert said, well, this state is a state that was formed by immigrants. Like Utah is an immigrant state by definition. Like, he was just totally pulling out all the LDS cards there.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'm not signing that. I don't agree with you guys. Sorry. And similar to Romney and impeachment, Herbert, he's about to end his third term now. Said, I'm not playing that game. I'm not going with that. I don't agree with it. And so, or like we've pointed out many times before, like, the Muslims get the free pass on gay marriage, but LDS Church doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Or just how they're the punching bag. And so and it's funny because the general authorities try super hard to not be political, but then but everyone wants them to be, or they end up getting caught in it anyway.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. So that's a really good point you bring up.
Yeah.
About them being porous and related.
Yeah.
So
Cool. Well, shall we wrap up? You have any last words?
I'm never really mad at anybody. I'm too tired for that. I'm not like the only like that one time about the Book of Mormon when I went off about King Noah. That part I was actually kind of excited, but I think almost all the time I'm not. I am kind of opinionated about the Black Lives Matter thing, but to me, I think we're all on the same page. We all think that the police suck and could use some reform.
Yes.
And we all dislike Trump, and it's not the we don't disagree on what the problem is, just the solution, right?
Well, and if anybody doesn't fit into those doesn't check those boxes, that's okay too.
Yeah, of course. I'm just saying.
But yeah, no, there is a lot of
I feel there's a lot of people stressed, and I feel self-conscious too, and I feel maybe my style has been a little. And seeing Alex Joy, and I'm like, oh, is that what I sound like? Like I see him, and I'm like, oh, that's probably what I sound like to everybody is Alex. I jump in, I don't have any data or links or logic, but but yeah,
it's a good way to not worry about any of that
I'm
stuff.
hopeful. Don't stop going to the forum.
No.
Stop posting.
No, I was going to say a good way to not worry about any of that stuff is Lexapro.
Oh, right. Yeah, no,
works wonders.
Yeah.
There's my our that's a word from our sponsor for tonight.
Oh, yes.
They paid me.
Mine is caffeine and/or amphetamines. So, but yeah, I feel like Johnny, I'm not mad at you. I swear. I just like my other post. I'm trying to draw out his opinions because sometimes they get really really stuck on something. I'm like, can't we just like make a preposition, like make a resolution and say, I this is what I'm for and this is what I'm against. But I have trouble keeping up with Jared and Johnny when they go in circles sometimes, and I hope if Johnny needs to take a step back, I totally support that. But everything everyone said to him, I think was totally sincere, and I didn't say anything, but I liked all the posts. I just I'm not passionate, but I am sincere. I can say that.
Very good.
Yeah. So
cool.
I don't know. I hope we covered what Jack wanted to.
Yeah.
Did I get all the shout-outs done? I hope we covered. I hope we covered some of the stuff that Jack wanted. He's the only one who actually asked for anything from me. So I hope I did that.
We'll revisit it at a future. Condo. Sure. So cool. Well, thank you very much for.
Sure.
I guess it's midnight your time. So.
It is.
All right.
But caffeine and amphetamines.
So things go. All right.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll let you go. It was good talking.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks for humoring me and stuff.
Cool. Well, have a good night.
Okay, you too.